Hi everybody, welcome to Saturday Night SQL Virtual Group webinar. My name is Sarah Huang. I'm the founder and organizer of this virtual group. Join me here is Debbie Huang, our co-organizer. Today we are glad to invite Brad Llewellyn to present what is a data scientist and how do I become one. This is a very popular topic, and I'm very excited to learn from Brad. Brad is a data scientist at Valorem in Charlotte, North Carolina. He has a master's degree in statistics from the University of South Carolina and an MCSE certification in data management and analytics and an MCSE certification in cloud platform and infrastructure. He is currently working on his MCSA in machine learning at Valorem. Brad's role involves educating clients and colleagues about Microsoft data science and advanced analytics offerings, as well as how to fully utilize these offerings to solve business problems. Brad is an active blogger. I'm sure he'll share his contact information with us. We really appreciate Brad spend his Saturday night to share his knowledge with us. Before I transfer the screen over to Brad, let me first go through a few slides with past community news. Let me start the slideshow. All right. As you may know already, PASS has launched Facebook Live. You may want to check it out at facebook.com PASS. I think that's a different session. All right. Yeah, follow the PASS Facebook page. Sorry. Okay. Also, PASS has a career center if you're looking for a new career or recruiting for technical talent. I suggest you check out the pass.com/career. PASS Summit 2018 registration has a new offering. You may register for PASS Summit 2018, and as a member of Saturday Night SQL Virtual Group, you can get a special bonus, which is a free streaming access to all of the PASS Summit 2017 content. You may use this code VGSTRP9II to register PASS Summit 2018 and get this offering. These are the upcoming virtual group webinars. In March, DBA fundamentals and cloud data architecture, those virtual groups all have their webinars. Also not showing in here is our Saturday Night SQL virtual group webinar. One of them is there will be Will's here. It's talking about big data in SQL Server. This is March 10th. And on March 24th, Brad will come back and present Azure Machine Learning Studio, making data science easier. PASS has many virtual groups on different topics or different languages. You may join as many as you like, and as always, you're more than welcome to join our virtual group, which is Saturday Night SQL. And in case you don't know, women in technology, you don't have to be a lady to join this virtual group. And also there are some other ones like big data and data science. There, I think there's a data analytics as well. or maybe business analytics. Those are the virtual groups that may related to the topic we talked tonight. These are upcoming SQL Saturdays. On March 3rd, Victoria, March 10th, Spokane, and also Iceland. Check it out on their website. Also, connect with the past. You may connect with through Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. This is the Twitter handle. Lastly, if you would like to ask questions, interact directly with Brad, you may raise your hand so Debbie will unmute you. Otherwise, please enter your question in this chat window, and we'll read your questions out to the audience. Thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. And I'm going to transfer the screen over to Brad. And thank you so much, Brad, for doing the presentation for our virtual group.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, good evening, everyone, or good morning, good afternoon, depending on what side of the world you happen to be in. My name is Brad Llewellyn. I am a senior analytics associate, actually, now. I just moved jobs, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. So a lot of what I do is I help people accelerate their data careers and kind of achieve their dream job. That's what this presentation is all about. So we're going to walk through a lot of the mistakes I made and the lessons I had to learn earlier on in my career to hopefully prevent some of you from making the same ones. We're also going to walk through 3 of the different types of quote-unquote data scientists I've met throughout my career, and then talk about what specifically you can do to become that if that's what you want. So the first tip, and this is actually a relatively new one to my list. Earlier on in my career, I just sat in meetings and listened and left the meeting and assumed that everybody in the meeting had the same thoughts I did. Everybody got the same thing out of it. And every once in a while you'd have issues and people would have miscommunications. And the question is, how do you prevent that? How do you put yourself ahead? And the easiest way I was able to advance my career, and this was a tip my boss gave me, was to take notes all the time. So even if you're here, taking notes of what we talk about can be very helpful. In any meeting you ever go into, taking notes of what's said and then sending it out to the project managers or the meeting leaders after the meeting is extraordinarily helpful. I can't tell you how many raves I got from project managers and managers because I was one of the very few people doing that. So that's first tip. A little bit about me. As we saw, my name is Brad Llewellyn. I'm a senior data scientist at Centelli Solutions here in Charlotte. My first day is actually Monday. I haven't even started yet. So I have the whole alphabet soup of Microsoft certifications, which we will talk about later. I've been an analytics consultant for about 5 years, and you can connect with me in various places with the handle Breaking BI. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I have a blog at the address there. You can also send me an email if you'd like. I'm also one of the organizers of a local PASS chapter here in Charlotte called the Charlotte BI Group. So if you happen to be in Charlotte or are passing through for whatever reason, you can find us at charbigroup.com. So please come check us out. One of the things I like to stop on this page and take note of is, how do you present yourself to a prospective employer or to a recruiter or just to a colleague? So a lot of people, when they're talking to a recruiter or going on LinkedIn or something, try to talk about how long they've done something. I've never really met a hiring manager that cares about how long you've done something. What they're really after is how well you can do something. So one of the easiest ways to showcase that is not through how long you've done something, but through what accomplishments you've had. And an easy way to showcase that is with certifications. And Microsoft has a great set of certifications that we can look at, and we'll talk about a few of these throughout the presentation. Definitely want to give another thanks to the Saturday Night SQL group for having me and for hosting this session. I am a huge fan of the PASS organization. I'm sure all of you here know what PASS is, seeing as how you got into this session. But if there are only two things that you get out of this session tonight, one of them should be certifications. Certifications, certifications, certifications. And we'll talk about that repeatedly. It's second, get involved in the community. So I actually got my new job that I'm starting on Monday solely because of community involvement. It had nothing to do with me going out and talking to recruiters or hiring managers. It was because people recognized me in the community. And I don't do it because I get anything out of it. I do it because it gives back. And I can almost guarantee that if you put forth the effort, you'll see similar results. So whether it's getting involved with a virtual chapter or finding a local chapter near you or attending SQL Saturdays and helping, in whatever way you can, I heavily emphasize getting involved in the community, and PASS is a great way to do that. So before we can talk about what a data scientist is, we kind of need to level set on what is data science. It's certainly a buzzword. So one of the easiest ways I like to think about it, and this seems to be what I get 75% agreement on, which is about the highest amount of agreement you'll get on the word data science. If we look at this here, this is the Gartner analytics maturity life cycle. It steps you through the different types of questions that businesses ask as they get more and more advanced in their analytics. So we start with descriptive analytics, what happened, and then you move to diagnostic and predictive and prescriptive, and we've all heard these terms before. So what is data science? Where does it fall on this? I like to say that about the top 60% of this is data science. So definitely anything predictive or prescriptive. So computers making decisions for you, certainly data science. There's also a large area of data science a lot of people don't think about, which is root cause analysis. Why do things happen? And letting the computers dig through your data for you, or letting your computers tell you why things happened. And there are a lot of ways to do that. One thing I'd like to do throughout this session is I don't want to use the word data science again. Because it's such a buzzword. So the way I like to think of it is anything advanced analytics is data science. So virtually anything in the realm of advanced data analytics, we're going to consider data science. And the reason I think of it that way, and I've got a much longer presentation on exactly this question here, is there are 1,000 different ways that we can present a data science solution to a customer, whether it's internal or external, or it's another team at your company. And there are a lot of different people that interact on those data science solutions. So I would argue anybody who plays a key role in delivering a data science solution is a data scientist. And we'll talk about what that means shortly. So as far as the agenda, we'll start with the basic advice, which I will hope you take some of. Some of it you may already know. And then we'll walk through the 3 different types of roles I've seen throughout the industry. The first role is what I like to call a traditional data scientist. It's the data analyst type. So it's the ones that build predictive models to tell you what you're going to sell next month. It's the ones where boss comes up and says, I need to know why our sales are down. That's the one who runs that sort of analysis. Then you've got the advanced business intelligence architect, who doesn't do much of the model building, but they've built a lot of the plumbing behind those models. Productionalizing a data science solution is far more than just building a predictive model. There's a whole lot of plumbing and integration that has to happen, and the people who productionalize that need to know how it works, and that's why one of the main reasons why I consider them for that title. And then finally, we'll talk about the advanced big data architect as well. So let's start with some basic advice, some of it which I had to learn the hard way, and some of it which was given to me, fortunately. First, I'll say it again, certifications. We'll talk about exact certifications throughout this presentation that you can get for each of these different groups. Another way that you can do self-paced learning is building your own project or blogging. This is a very underutilized one. So I have quite a few people that come up to me and say, how do I wow people during interviews? Hiring manager comes in, he's got 10,000 questions that don't seem to peg me exactly right. I don't fit exactly in those questions he's looking for or she's looking for. And my response is always, the hiring manager's not looking for you to be able to answer all those questions perfectly. What a hiring manager wants to know is, if I hire you, can you do the job? So one of the easiest ways to do that is to take a little bit of your own time and build something. Let's say you're trying to be a R developer. If you were to build something in R and bring it to your interview with you, you could potentially show that to the hiring manager. Instead of him having a bunch of questions without knowing anything about you, you can show him what you've built instead. And that can easily bridge a gap and give you something to talk about and showcase your skills instead of just talking about them. Pairing that with certifications on top of it is basically an instant hire. And finally, attend webinars and online courses. I'm obviously preaching to the choir here because you're all doing that, but do more of it. I've probably spent hundreds of hours watching webinars and online courses, and it's a major factor as to how I got where I am, because the things you learn make you who you are. So next, how to make a resume or a CV. Definitely emphasize those certifications or those blogs or those trainings. Instead of saying that you've been a cog in the wheel for the last 6 years at an organization, talk about how you've bettered yourself. One of the things I really want us to consider throughout this entire presentation is, when we want a job, whether it's a traditional data scientist job or whether it's BI architect or big data or something else entirely, we're asking an organization to invest in us. You're asking a manager to invest in you personally. And the easiest way you can do that is by investing in yourself first. And you can do that through certifications and through blogs and through training. And if you put forth that effort, make sure they know. I hate buzzwords. I seriously hate buzzwords. We have to use them, unfortunately. Most hiring managers won't read your entire resume. And if you emphasize your certifications and your blogs and you use the word SQL or R or Python or Hadoop or whatever you're looking for, then you're in. And finally, more of a pet peeve of mine, professional contact information is always important. Every once in a while, I'll hear about people who have a really strange looking email address or have a strange name that comes up when you email them. And I've found people that actually have lost opportunities because they have their contact information from high school on there that they thought was funny 20 years ago. So here's where we get to the really important stuff. So the other stuff was just the basics, things that we all already have been told. Here's what it took me far too long to learn. I have never in my entire career gotten a callback from an automated resume system. Never once. I've submitted hundreds of resumes through automated systems. The only times I've ever gotten responses to my resume is by networking with people. And one of the ways that I've done that is LinkedIn is a great resource. Earlier in my career, when I was looking for jobs, I would find organizations near me that do what I want to do, and I would find anybody in that organization with the title of manager or recruiting manager or talent acquisition specialist, anything like that. And I would send them a message saying, hey, my name's Brad, blah, blah, blah. Here's my blog. I do this. I'm wondering if you're interested. And almost every single time they will get back to you. Recruiters are paid to get you in the door, so they will absolutely want to speak to you. Another great way is through user groups and meetups. Being a part of this virtual group is a great thing. Unfortunately, with the virtual groups, you do lack that networking opportunity. So if there are any local groups near you, absolutely get out and go to them. Probably half of the user groups near me have professional recruiters that show up to them, and they would love to talk to you about what it is that you're looking to do and organizations around you that do it. It also gives you an opportunity to meet people in similar situations and learn about, do they work for a good employer or maybe they work for a bad employer that you should avoid. You can get all of those things if you actually get out and network with people. Finally, make sure that you're always reaching out to recruiters and thought leaders. For instance, you can send me an email after this, and if you're in a Charlotte area, I may be able to help you. Otherwise, go to your local meetups, go to your local user groups, talk to the presenter afterwards, talk to the leaders of the user groups, talk to the recruiters there. They're usually in positions of power and can either get you in the door or give you advice about where to look. Some basic interview tips. I've done a good many interviews throughout my career. I've interviewed a lot of data scientists, and there are a few things that I'm ashamed to admit how little preparation I've done for some interviews. I will straight up tell you, I walked into an interview once without even knowing the name of the company I was interviewing at. Needless to say, I did not get that job. So a basic preparation when you walk in of knowing who you're interviewing with, if possible, what company you're interviewing for, definitely, and what role you're interviewing for, what they're looking for. You can get that basic information from their website, or if you're working with recruiters and thought leaders like we talked about, they'll give you all the information and more. So absolutely prepare. 30 minutes of preparation is the difference between getting that job and not getting that job. Next, that build your own project we talked about earlier, and we'll talk about it through all the 3 types later. Bring that to your interview. When the interviewers start asking their list of 700 questions, stop them and say, hey, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt your interview, but I've actually built something. I was wondering if you'd rather see that than go through the list of questions. And you'd be amazed how many people will go, yeah, I'd much rather see your work than talk about it. And finally, stay positive. I was very down on myself earlier in my career because why doesn't this interviewer like me? Why doesn't this job want me? I will tell you, I actually interviewed a very famous data scientist for our company. He was well respected throughout the community, and he probably had no trouble landing whatever job he wanted. I actually turned him down, not because he was deficient in any way. I turned him down because he wasn't what we were looking for. He was not the right type of data scientist, but that doesn't in any way mean he was any less valuable of a data scientist. So just because one job doesn't think you're the right fit, don't get down about that. Next, some basic career tips. Again, I will say something that you'll get tired of me hearing because I'm going to say it over and over again because we need to remember it. You can't expect an employer to invest in you if you aren't willing to invest in yourself. So spend an hour a week working on training and certifications. It will quickly accelerate your career. Just get 1 test under your belt, 2 tests under your belt, and you'll see how the interview offers just start flying in. Also, another thing that's very underutilized is, for those of you that have jobs right now, you likely have a manager who directly oversees your work. That manager can almost assuredly give you advice on what you may need to work on or what you may be great at. So ask them if they want to sit down and have a one-on-one and just say, hey, I'm looking to better myself. I was wondering if you would take the time to give me some guidance on things I can work on. And most managers will love to do that. And again, stay positive. I've had a job I hated, and I know how it's easy to get down. I even once said negative things about a previous job during a job interview. None of that ever helps. So stay positive, stay upbeat, continue to work on yourself, and I can assure you that the jobs will fly in. So let's move on to the core of this talk. We're here to talk about what is a data scientist. So let's talk about the first type. This is the type that most of you probably think of when you think of what is a data scientist, and that's the data analyst. So what does a data analyst do? The core of this type of role is focusing on individual analyses. Boss comes in and says, we're trying to launch a new product. We need to know which market to launch it in. Okay, that could potentially be an advanced analytics question. A lot of the tasks involved here is somebody needs to clean that data up, very, very likely. You're going to build and evaluate some predictive models, and you're going to compile and present those results to leadership in some way. You'll spend a week working on that model, and you'll probably move on to a new one for the next week. It's got a very dynamic flow to it, usually. And the focus is on those individual analyses. So you get to touch a lot of different things. What are some of the titles you could look for if you were looking for this type of job? The main one you'll find data scientist under a lot of them. I put an asterisk there because, just like the point of this talk, data scientist doesn't always mean this. And we'll look at a job description here in a minute so you can see exactly what we look for. Data analyst also sometimes means this. So if you see those, it might be what you're looking for. I would caution around data analyst, be very specific about what tools need to be used, because a lot of data analysts are just Excel jockeys, which there's nothing wrong with that type of job. I've met some very productive Excel wizards, but that's not what we're talking about today. And you might also find statistical analyst and statistical modeler. Those will very likely fall under this category. What are the job requirements? For this type of job, you're very likely going to need a strong math or stats background. This is pretty much a requirement, because when you're building predictive models in these tools like R or Python or SAS, as we see here, you need to understand why you would use certain models in certain ways and what they do, and how to get data in and how to get data out of them. So a math or stats background is a requirement here. I'm not a big fan of people that say you need PhDs and things like that. I don't have a PhD, and I do just fine. And I've met plenty of people who also don't have PhDs. I've met people that don't even have degrees at all in math and stats, and they do great. It's really just about the background. Do you have a good understanding? And you can learn most of the basics in some courses, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So where can I find free online training for this? Free is the key word here. Investing in ourselves is awesome, but we don't always have the available money to go buy things. So free online training is a great option. If you want to learn R, there's a website called RStudio. RStudio is actually one of the primary tools that people use to develop R code. So you'll find a lot of interesting stuff on there. They have a section on their website for webinars. I've searched and searched and searched and never found a single location for Python, unfortunately. But I have been able to find a tremendous amount of interesting stuff using Google or YouTube. And if SAS is more your taste, SAS is not a free tool, but they do offer free webinars. So you can find their webinars at their website, SAS.com. And I will send this presentation out to Sarah after the meeting, and she can send it out to all of you so you can have all of these links. So past free online training, while we're doing our free online training, we obviously want to be building something. We want to get our hands dirty so that, one, we know that we can do it, and two, we have something to show people later. How do you build your own project? There's a website out there called Kaggle. It's a competition website. So if anybody's ever heard of the scenario where Netflix offered to pay $1 million to anybody that could build a better recommendation engine than they used. That was done on Kaggle. People, Netflix posted that to Kaggle, and people from all over the world came in and submitted different approaches for that. So you can find any number of data sets you want. It's completely free. There's nothing stopping you from getting on there. So you've got your data set off of Kaggle. R and Python, you can download them for free. You can download R, you can download RStudio, you can download Python or any of the development environments for those. You can Google those at your convenience. SAS has a free 14-day trial if that's what you like. As far as which one you want to use, whichever one kind of fits your fancy. I don't generally pick them. You can try them all. I have heard that if you come from a math or stats background, R is generally pretty easy to get behind. Python is generally easier if you come from more of a computer science background. But that's just what I've heard. I come from a math background, so I come from the R side, unfortunately. So now that we've done our free online training, we've built some things, now we need something to put on our resume showing, hey, I can do this. Certifications are the best way to do that. As I said, we'll talk about certifications and we will continually emphasize them. You can find an R certification for $49 a month at Coursera. Johns Hopkins University has a data science course there that I've heard great things about. So you can find that there. If you want to learn Python, Edureka has a Python course for $389. And SAS offers their own list of certifications for $180. So if this is the type of role you're looking for and you want to use one of these tools, you can find great courses there. Now that we've talked about that, let's take a look at a job description so we can kind of see what we're looking for. Data analyst job description. So I'm going to try to scroll in here. So I've kind of highlighted the things that are interesting, and these are actually jobs near me in Charlotte right now. So this job description is called a data analyst. And one of the things we notice here is it talks about supporting multiple areas through data science. That's something important to look for. That's a key right there that shows, hey, maybe this is the type of data analyst I want. This is not an Excel data analyst. This is a more advanced type. Things like measuring and evaluating impact of data science initiatives. That's another key that made me think this was a data scientist role. And as we saw before, conducting ad hoc analytical requests, because that's a majority of what the role is going to be. And finally, once you've built a model, you obviously have to communicate that out. So developing those communications. Looking at just those 4 lines of this job description, I was able to say, this is the advanced data analyst job description. So we will go back to the presentation. Give that a second to sink in. The next job we're going to talk about is the Advanced Business Intelligence Architect. And don't worry too much about remembering what each of these are. We'll have a review at the end so that we can kind of compare them. The Advanced Business Intelligence Architect is what I am, so I can speak a lot more strongly about what this job does. But the business intelligence architect builds relational structures. Instead of worrying about that one piece, the predictive model side of it, they worry about how do we consume those results. So somebody builds a predictive model, and those results have to be consumed some way. The business intelligence architect is in charge of making sure that those results get delivered in a manner that is appropriate for the business and the problem at hand. So what are the tasks this type of job does? They create what we call pipelines or structures. So data comes in one side, a bunch of things happen to it, comes out the other side. We also do a lot of report building in the business intelligence space. Over on the right side here, we can see a snapshot from SQL Server, and we see our main difference between the data analyst and the business intelligence architect. The data analyst generally deals with data in a rectangular format, one table. A lot of times data analysts will require that somebody else give them data in that form. For the business intelligence side of the house, we want our data to be in separate tables so that we can combine them later in whatever ways we want. What are some of the job titles we might find for this type of role, if this is what we want? So first, report developer is generally this type of role. Database developers also generally fall into this category. And data engineers are a term that seems to be coming up a lot more lately. That has an asterisk beside it because I've also seen data engineering jobs that are actually big data engineering jobs. So it's important to note which tool sets that they want to use. Data modeler is also a job that sometimes falls under this category. Again, be careful because data modeler could also mean the data analyst we talked about before. Are they talking about relational models like the business intelligence space? Or are they talking about predictive models like the advanced data analyst space? And we'll look through a job description for this as well later. So if this is the role you want to go, if instead of building the predictive model, you want to build the pipeline that encapsulates it, the job requirements loosen dramatically. A math or stats background is still very helpful, but since you don't have to be 100% in depth of the model, you just have to know how to properly utilize it, then computer science background becomes beneficial here also. And the tools you might use with that, for this group, it probably no shocker that I put all Microsoft tools on here. But people often do ask me, why is this whole thing focused on Microsoft? Why wouldn't I want to use Oracle or one of those other tool sets? And I can honestly say I've I'm fully on the Microsoft train, not because I used to work for a Microsoft consultancy. In fact, my new job isn't for a Microsoft consultancy. They're a brand new Microsoft partner. It's because Microsoft's making so many great plays in the data space that they are definitely a contender for the next 10 years of data. If you're starting from scratch, Microsoft is a great place to go. For those of you that are already on this webinar, that are already in the Microsoft space, it's a great place to stay in. And within that space, SQL Server's a general development environment for building a lot of those databases. Power BI is a great reporting tool, and it's one of the ones we'll focus on here. Also, Microsoft Azure is a great place to go. Azure is making amazing plays, and honestly, that's what's advanced my career. The more I've learned about Azure, the more productive I've become for my employers. So absolutely focusing there. Where can you find online training? One of the major advantages of sticking with a single vendor is Microsoft has, I can honestly say, the best training out there. They really do. And one of their options is something called the Microsoft Virtual Academy, which you can see there at mva.microsoft.com. It's great for multiple reasons. One, because there's hundreds of webinars on there. Some as short as just a 5-minute intro to something, and there are others that are an hour or two going in depth on something. Another one is, since Microsoft runs the training and they run the certification program, you'll find webinars on there specifically designed to teach you what you need to know to take the certification test. So a great way to kill two birds with one stone there. I also always like to give a little shout out to a Microsoft consultancy out of Jacksonville, Florida called Pragmatic Works. I don't work for them, or I've never even met anybody from Pragmatic Works. But I can say that they have some of the best free training out there. They do weekly webinars on Tuesday that you can sign up for free, or you can search this link here and see all of their previous ones. And they'll talk about something Microsoft data. It'll be SQL Server, it'll be Power BI, it'll be Azure. So it's a great place to learn things for free. Once we've gone through our free training, how do we build our own project? The reason I like to point out Power BI is if you're looking to get into the BI space and you're not already in it, Power BI is an amazing way to do it for a couple of reasons. One, Power BI is completely free. We can download it here from this link. They also have their own sample data sets available that you can pull from. You could also go to Kaggle if you wanted and pull data sets from there. Downloading Power BI and building some data models and reports gives you a really good understanding of how to ingest data, how to model data, and how to report on data. So it gives you a real flavor of the whole space. And it's a great way to show a prospective employer that, hey, I know what I'm doing. If you want to stay more the developer route and you want to be in SQL Server 2016 Developer Edition is completely free. 2017, probably the same. I can't say for sure. And Azure has a free trial with sample data included if you wanted to go that route. So I would actually say do all three. Start with Power BI, maybe install SQL Server on your machine, spin up an Azure SQL database, and kind of see how it all works. So once you've done your free online training, you've built something, you need to showcase your skills. And Microsoft has literally the best certification structure out there. It's a little more on the pricier side. A single exam is $165. And for SQL Server, you can look under the link here for an MCSE. We saw that before. MCSE stands for Microsoft Certified Solutions Expert. It is the highest level of certification you can buy from Microsoft. And there are two main ones that we'll talk about here. The one under SQL Server is called Data Management Analytics. And the one under Azure at the bottom is called Cloud Platform and Infrastructure. You'll notice I have both of those. And I can say if you put forth the effort and spend the, $1,000 it takes to get those certifications, you will know everything you need to know to be a rock star in everything Microsoft data. And if anybody came to me looking for a job that had both of those, they would go to the top of my stack really quickly. Also, if you want to just take one exam related to Power BI, there's an exam called 70-778. That covers everything Power BI. So no matter what your fancy is, you can find exams here. And one thing I will point out is a lot of organizations, especially if you work for a consultancy, will pay for training. And a great way to spend it is on these exams. So obviously getting someone else to pay for it is a great way to do it. There seems to be a link missing. Oops, sorry. So, okay. There was a link here to my eBooks, but if you send me an email afterwards, and my contact information will be on the last slide, I've got eBooks for all of these exams that I'll give to you for free. So just send me an email and ask for a link to my eBooks, and you can have all of those. And I have books for studying for the SQL Server and Azure tests, all of them. I've got about 12 books in total. So I'll give those to you for free if that's what you want to do. Now that we've looked at that, let's look at one of the jobs we might find for the business intelligence space. So this is a Power BI developer, and this one actually isn't near me. I had to pull this one from Tallahassee, Florida. But when you're looking for a business intelligence role, what are you looking for? So integration is a word you'll often find. Anything that says Power BI or Azure is generally the right direction. Also, you might see words like SSRS or SSAS or cubes. Those are also really good indications that this is what you're looking for. And building reports is another thing that you might look for if those are the jobs that you're interested in. So let's move on to the final job title. This is the Advanced Big Data Architect. This is very similar to the Advanced Big Data Architect. They effectively do the same thing. Their job is to build the wrapper around the predictive model that creates the rest of the data science solution. So we've talked about the people who build the models themselves, talked about the BI architects that build the relational structures. The big data architect builds what's called distributed structures. And we won't go into specifics on why distributed is important, but basically once data gets large enough, putting it all in a single location just isn't feasible anymore. So you start spreading it out, and that's called distribution. So you'll see the tasks here are almost the same of what we saw before. We create pipelines and structures. The only difference is those structures are distributed instead of relational, and they're a lot more complicated. We also perform analyses. One of the interesting things about big data is that big data is not so simple. SQL's been around for, I don't even know how many decades, but it's probably 20 or 30 years at least. And pretty much everybody knows how to get data in and out of SQL at this point. Most questions are pretty easy to answer with SQL. Big data, on the other hand, makes everything harder. So even performing basic analyses and answering basic questions becomes a task that people have to do. So you would likely do a lot of that in your big data engineer or big data architect role. So what type of job titles would you look for? Big data engineer is obviously going to be this. Data engineer may also be this. Data engineer also showed up on the BI side. So if you see data engineer, make sure you look closely as to what tools they're using. And finally, anything like a Hadoop developer would also be this. We'll talk more about what Hadoop is in a minute. So what are the job requirements? They're the same job requirements as the BI architect. The difference here is there's a little bit more of a focus on computer science. Big data is a relatively new field. It's come to prominence literally over the last couple of years. That's how new a lot of these tools are. It's not new technology. It's just finally gotten to the point where people can use it. And the elephant in the room, pun intended, is Hadoop. Haha, for those that don't know, Hadoop's mascot is an elephant, as you can see in that picture. And Hadoop is not easy to use. It is not for the faint of heart. So having a computer science background makes that a lot easier. I often see a lot of people using Python on top of Hadoop, and we'll talk about that. But I really like to point out Azure here. We'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to the build your own project, but Azure is really where you want to go if you want to be in big data. I've had this conversation with quite a few people, ranging from just employees at banks and whatnot, all the way up to leaders of big data consultancies. And the consensus is there is no future in big data that isn't in the cloud. So definitely a focus on Azure if you're looking to get into the big data space. Where can you find free online training? Hadoop is created by a company called Hortonworks, and they offer their own free webinars, which is great. Python, as we talked about before, I was not able to find a single site for that. Azure has the same links we saw before. So go to Microsoft Virtual Academy, go to pragmaticworks.com. You can ask me for a link to my eBooks. I have a few Azure books as well. So if you're looking for that free training, those are places you can go. Once you've gotten your free training, we also want to build something. Hadoop is open source. You can install Hadoop on your machine by going to hadoop.apache.org. I will give a lot of caution here. Hadoop is not simple by any means. So if you're just starting your career, I would say that's probably not the way you want to go, because you might get bogged down in a lot of just installation. Azure, on the other hand, makes it a lot easier. So if this is the route you want to go, make an Azure trial and spin up what's called an HD Insight resource. HD Insight is Microsoft's version of Hadoop in Azure, and it makes it like a one-click experience. You can say, I want to spin up a Hadoop, I want to spin up an HD Insight cluster with this type of configuration, and off it goes. So it takes a lot of the installation out of it, and then you can just learn how to code in it, which is a lot easier than the installation. Where can you find good certifications? Hortonworks has a great certification system for Hadoop. I will say that I have heard from people that getting the Hadoop certifications doesn't seem to help too much. Not because they're not great certifications, but because they're vendor agnostic. And a lot of employers don't really appreciate vendor agnostic certifications, and I kind of understand why. So I would say if you're looking for your first exam, get the MCSE in Cloud Platform and Infrastructure. And then if you want to learn more, then you can dig deeper into some of those Hadoop exams to learn specifically about Spark or specifically about HBase or Cassandra or any of those other things. And the same Eureka course on Python we saw earlier. So let's take a look at an advanced big data architect type role. This one is a big data developer. It's actually at a company right here in Charlotte called Red Ventures. There are a few things we looked for on here. Things like Scala and Spark. So Spark is a type of Hadoop configuration. It's used for batch processing, and you can do machine learning in it as well. And Scala is a programming language that you can use on top of a lot of Hadoop configurations. The words big data, anything that says Hadoop and Hive, Kafka, NoSQL, streaming, anything like that would be very indicative of this type of role. And then anything that says in the cloud is generally going to be what you want. I actually gave bonus points to this one. I'm a pretty firm believer that a big data architect or a big data engineer that has a solid understanding of relational data is extremely valuable. That's because I've never met an organization in my entire career that was all big data. Every organization I've ever met that uses big data also uses SQL. So having an understanding of both is really helpful, which is why I say, well, one of the easy career paths is start in BI and then move to big data if that's the direction you want to go. There are a lot of BI jobs right now. There are not as many big data jobs, and that's shifting over time. So you can take advantage of that current. So now that we've looked at those three, let's kind of talk about what the differences are. Why you pick one over the other. So let's start with the advanced data analyst. They build predictive models. That's pretty much all they do. And those models can predict any type of question depending on what industry you go in or who you work for. I will say that this type of job has a high barrier to entry if you're not in math or stats. If you don't have a really solid fundamental of math and stats, then you might get lost in the different types of regression, the different types of decision trees, and why you choose one versus another. The demand for this type of role is extremely high right now. There are way more job openings for this type of data scientist than there are people to fill them. However, I will say if your timeline of moving into data science is more in the 5 to 10 year time frame, I would urge you to maybe look elsewhere. Not because there's anything wrong with this role. It's a great role and companies are getting great demand out of it. It's because there are a lot of tools coming onto the market right now that automate this job. There's a tool that I like called Azure Machine Learning Studio that I'm giving another presentation on that makes this a lot easier. And there are tools coming out on the market like H2O's Driverless AI that literally do it for us, just completely. You give it your data and your question, and it builds the models for you. So as those tools get more powerful, I expect we'll see a decrease in demand for that type of role. But that's not going to be in the next 5 to 10 years. The advanced BI architect, instead of building the predictive models, they build the structures that go around them. This has a very low barrier to entry. If you're looking for something that's easy for people who have little job experience or are just moving into tech, this is a great place to go. Demand is also really high for this. There are a ton of Power BI developer jobs out there. So if that's what you're looking to get into, that's an easy way to go. Also, SQL's not going anywhere. SQL's going to be around for at least the next 10 years. So there's good job stability in that as well. And finally, the big data architect, they focus on building structures as well, but those are distributed structures, meaning they're a little bit harder to use, harder to manage. They require a more advanced skill set. And that causes a high barrier to entry. There aren't too many big data architects out there. There aren't nearly as many big data architects as there are BI architects. And demand is honestly pretty low because most organizations aren't using big data yet. However, that will increase quickly. Every year, we're going to see more and more companies moving to big data. And this is why my general recommendation is for somebody who wants to get into data analytics, start with BI and then kind of branch out from there. Start with BI, and if you really like the predictive model inside of it, then you can move to an advanced data analyst from BI. Or start in BI, and if you really like the data structure side of it, you can move into big data as your organization or as you find a new job that does that. So we've talked about a lot. We talked about the 3 different roles and given career advice and whatever. So where do we start? Step 1, just choose a role. We've talked about the 3. You know who you are. You know what your skills are. You know what you want to do. Pick one. Then follow the links we have here to find the relevant certification, and then prepare. Use the webinars. Use my books if you'll send me an email. Build something with it, and get certified. Invest that little bit of money in yourself, and get that certification. And don't waste your time. While you're doing this, get out and network. I cannot emphasize how much that's going to accelerate your career if you get out and attend user groups. And more importantly, get out and present. A lot of people think that you need to be an expert to present, and that's just not true. Most user groups will let you present on virtually anything you want to present on. So even if it's here's my beginner's guide to how to get started with Power BI. A lot of user groups need that type of talk. Here's my beginner's guide to how to get started with R or how to get started with Python. Those are great presentations that user groups will take you up on. And the more that you're presenting, the more comfortable you'll get, the more exposure you'll get, and then the jobs will come to you instead of you going to them. I also like to tell people it's corny, but the easiest way to learn is to teach others. And I found that to be very true throughout my career. So thank you for your time. Like I said, my name's Brad Llewellyn. You can see my contact information there. I do have a few other presentations. I'm giving one here in a few weeks about Azure Machine Learning Studio. If you're interested in data science, that's a great way to do it. Other than that, thank you so much for your time, and I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you so much, Brad. This is very informative. I really learned a lot, and I really love your presentation. And we got this person asking about your ebook. Do you think they need to email you?
Yes, yeah, my email's right here on the bottom of the page.
Okay.
Just have them send me an email, and I'll send them a link.
Okay. I'm sure your email mailbox will be flooded.
Sure, I would. That's the best case. I want everybody to get that information. That's why I have it out there for free.
Okay. So Joseph and David, I unmuted both of you. If you guys want to ask your questions directly.
Sounds good. Hi, Brad. This is Dave Davis. I have a question for you about what about storytelling aspect, and what do you suggest for like visualizations?
Are you asking me on what visualizations are good for storytelling, or how you would learn how to be a good storyteller?
How to learn how to be a good storyteller.
That's a hard one, honestly. There's an organization run by two women around here actually, called Storytelling with Data. They do free presentations on how to tell better stories. There are thought leaders. I'm trying to think of their names. There's the old ones like Stephen Few and Edward Tufte that everybody likes to talk about.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
God, I'm blanking. I'm sorry. It's not entirely in my wheelhouse.
Well, I think one of them, isn't her name Cole? Starts with Cole something. I'm trying to remember her last name right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Storytelling's something I wish I was better at, but unfortunately,
no problem. I just thought I would ask in case you know. Thank you very much.
All right. So the next question is, where can I find free statistic training?
Free statistics training?
Yeah.
So, can I ask a follow-up question to that? Do they mean training on how to learn like the statistical models and things like that?
Let me see if I can unmute Paul. Paul, would you be able to? I have unmuted you. Would you be able to ask your question?
Yes, in terms of statistics courses like college or advanced statistics courses for data science.
Sure. So that Johns Hopkins University course in data science is a great one. Actually, they go through a lot of the different models, and that's why I recommend it. Also, that Edureka course on Python is specifically Python for data science. So if you kind of pick the language that you're interested in, or the language you know, those courses will teach you not only the language, but also the basics of why you would use certain types of models.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I guess you already answered David's question. Another one is, can you give some comments on Microsoft Professional Certificates on data science?
Comments, certainly. Microsoft has a certification for data science that ends in a capstone project. I've heard great things about that. If you're completely new to data science, or even new to analytics in general, then that's a great way to learn. They will teach you about R and Python and Azure Machine Learning, and they'll teach you about Power BI and how to expose all that. So if you're completely new, that Microsoft certification is a great one. If you've got decent fundamentals, you kind of know what regression is and things, then the MCSEs are a really great way to expand your technical knowledge of statistics with more of the Microsoft data side. So you pick which one you need.
Do you have more questions? I have unmuted you.
Yeah, I'm Brad. Actually, I'm the one just sending that question. And sorry, I didn't pick up what you said. if I have some experience on BI, so what else is a better way to pick it up? MSCC?
So if you already have strong BI skills and are you trying to look into data science, trying to learn more about the predictive modeling side of it?
Yes.
There's a Microsoft certification. I don't have it linked here, but if you were to Google Microsoft certification for data science, it'll be up there. It's like a 3-month course or something like that, and it walks you through all of the basics you would need to learn to be a data scientist. And if you were to have that certification, it would certainly prepare you for a entry-level data scientist role.
So that one is different from this Microsoft program certificate for data science.
I would think they're the same thing.
Okay. I do have another question. In one of the slides about the advanced, the second advanced, that you said if you are a hire manager, if somebody has those 2 certificates, you put them on the top priority. Now this one, yes, I think so. Yes. So to get the first one and the last one, does it? If I don't have a computer science background, will it be very challenging?
So the answer is no. The MCSE in data management analytics does require a lot of SQL knowledge. It covers everything in Microsoft SQL Server. So you're going to have to know how to be a SQL programmer to get that.
I'm a SQL programmer. Okay.
And the MCSE in Cloud Platform is a lot broader. So you get to pick a lot of different exams to take. But if you take the Microsoft data ones, they don't really talk about how to be a SQL developer or anything like that. They don't require you to know how to code. They require you to know why you would choose a SQL database. Why would you choose Spark? Why would you choose HBase? What's a Lambda architecture? Those are the things you learn, and it's not super deep technically. So you wouldn't need to be a computer science major.
Okay, because I heard somebody was comparing the Azure with the Amazon. To say the Amazon is much less coding requirement, but Azure is require a lot of computer science coding skills. So
to get the certification, I don't remember that, but I can't speak for that other person.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Alex, would you like to ask your question directly? I have unmuted you. Yeah.
Oh, you have unmuted me. Thank you. Yes. Hi, Brad. Sure. Yeah. Can you build in-house private cloud with Azure?
You can.
Only Microsoft hosts Azure cloud only.
So traditional Azure is hosted by Microsoft, and you get all of the advantages of it being hosted. But there is something called Azure Stack, which basically allows you to put Azure on your own hardware. So you can do it in a private cloud, and if that's something you're interested in, you can look into Azure Stack and reach out to your Microsoft rep to talk about that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Another question is, I'm currently a .NET developer for years. How is a data science position different culturally than being a developer?
That's going to depend heavily on where you are. It's certainly a great question. I will say I've noticed, and I hope you're not a hiring manager or one of the people in charge of the teams, but traditional developers get beat up. They really do. They work terrible hours, and they're on call all the time, and they have to fix bugs, and it's not the type of job I would want. I can say that analytics has been much nicer than that for me. So I found that analytics is kind of a 9-to-5 job. You go in, you do your job. If you're not done by the end of the day, you can just do it tomorrow. It doesn't have that immediate customer impact that being a frontline developer does. So I find it more enjoyable, but that would really depend on where you work.
Another question is how to move from DBA to a data scientist.
That's probably the most common question I get, actually, surprisingly. It depends on how you want to be a data scientist. So one thing I'm a big proponent of is learn a little bit and inject it into what you already know. So there's huge untapped potential in the DBA world of having predictive algorithms predict problems for you. So you've got logs full of thousands of times that deadlocks have happened, or thousands of times that you've run into performance issues. Doing a little bit of learning on your own and maybe using an easy tool like Azure Machine Learning Studio could allow you to build a small algorithm that tries to identify when you're about to have performance issues. So if you had a machine learning algorithm that says, hey, we're noticing things that it looks likely that you're about to run into performance issues. If you could implement things like that into what you're already doing, then you'll find that moving to data science becomes less of a jump and more just a step.
Okay, Adam, I have unmuted you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a hi Brad. Thank you for the presentations, excellent. And I'm a BI developer, but may I ask, if I want to go for like a Hadoop architect, do I don't know Python. Do I go learn Python first or Hadoop first?
I wouldn't worry about being language specific. If you've already got core data skills, which you obviously do if you're a BI developer, there are 10,000 different languages in big data. Every architecture uses a different language, unfortunately. So I would say start working on make a free Azure trial and start playing around with the different HD Insight configurations, learning the difference between HBase and Hadoop and Spark and Kafka and all those things. That is much more important than knowing how to code in Scala, because you can learn how to code in Scala. It's knowing the fundamental architectures is where you'll find a lot more bang for your buck.
Okay, I see. So it's just like more from the bird view point. It's not the specific something.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hey Brad, during your presentation, you mentioned hiring the right the person you didn't hire. You said that person was not the right type of data scientist. What do you mean by that?
So that gets back to the fundamental difference between the first two types we talked about. So there are those, what I call the traditional data scientists, the data analysts, who focus a lot on the tech, a lot on the problem. So they say, for instance, I had a guy come in and he built a predictive model that could tell EMTs what they needed to do to get better customer satisfaction. And I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Yeah, I muted a person. I guess he has a lot of background.
Oh, okay, it's fine now. But one of the people I interviewed built this great algorithm, an awesome algorithm that can tell EMTs how to be better customer service professionals. And he was so excited about how great his algorithm was because it predicted all this and that. And then I talked to him about how he productionalized it. And he said he didn't. He said that, we weren't able to get it in production. And my thought was, from a BI perspective, that's not success. That's actually failure in our space. In the traditional data science space, that's success because you built a great model. But in the BI space, the model itself isn't important. It's how it gets to the end user. So it's just two different sides of the coin.
Correct. Okay, thank you. Is that called UD? Go ahead and ask your question. I have unmuted you. I think you sound like really soft. Can you be a little bit louder? Okay. Sorry. You said no questions. Well, Brad, you mentioned there like R and Python and SAS.
Mhm.
Among those tools, which one is more popular?
Microsoft would tell you Python is. So they've been doing yearly research, and R used to be the leading tool for that type of work. Python's becoming more popular. I will say there's not a huge difference between them, honestly. If you know how to do data science in one, you can do data science in the other. It's just a little bit of a learning curve. So pick the one that you know better. And I guess if you're starting from complete scratch, Python's got the better numbers behind it.
Cool. I heard about this a lot when somebody say, okay, I have a lot of data, but I don't know what to do with them, which is, I guess it coincides with the somebody asked earlier how to make tell a story with data. What would you suggest if, say, like I have a bunch of data, but I don't know how to make a story out of it?
So I guess is this for work, or is this somebody doing this on their own time? I'm not sure how to answer the question.
Say like, okay, you want to be a data scientist, and you need to say like you need to do make a project out of the data, but you don't know what to do with them. You know, how do you start a project? Because you do have data, but how do you make a story out of the data? Say like for a project that maybe help you with the job hunting.
Sure. So let's say you've got this big data set, and you want to be able to build something out of it, and you're using whatever tool's comfortable for you. I'm not worried about that. If that data set comes from a person, you could ask that person, you know, what's in the data set? What are you looking for? What's special here? If it's just a random data set you got off the internet, poke around in it and just start asking questions that come to your mind. So you've got this data set, and it is it's medical histories of people, and you can start just asking basic questions of how many of these people died, what was their average age when they died, what did they die of, and then just keep kind of ask whatever question comes to your mind, and that will be how you tell your story. So walk that person through kind of how your brain works, and that's what a story is. A story is nothing but a question and an answer, and then another question and another answer.
Cool, thank you. Is there any more questions from the audience? Okay, I got Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Brad, I have another question. So for an experienced BI developer, going to data scientist route or going to the big data, which one is more? I understand it's also, you know, related to personal background and skills, but generally speaking, which one is more, in terms of job perspective, which one is more, a little bit better?
Better's a tough word to use there. I will say if
better means more job opportunity and more long-term stability.
Sure. So BI skills. The best job stability you're going to find is just a more advanced BI job. So moving into BI architect. However, if you wanted to branch out, and I'm all for people branching out. In fact, I'm currently trying to branch out into big data. Then adding a little flavor of one of the other sides, adding some of the statistics, adding some of the big data, as far as which one of those you choose. If you want a job right now, it's going to be the predictive modeling side. The companies are just gobbling up BI professionals that have statistical knowledge are immensely valuable. That's how I got my job.
Okay.
More so than big data, because not a lot of organizations use big data yet.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Alex, go ahead and ask your question.
Right. Where does one find Microsoft equivalent of Kafka? Like that's not in SSIS, right? Is that right? Or is in Azure?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding your question. I think your microphone's breaking up.
Okay, so
Right.
the SSIS used for is for relational mapping and integrating data about relational technology.
Alex,
It's not doing anything right.
Alex, do you mind to type your question?
I think he already has.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can read his question. Okay. So,
For non-relational messaging and data transformations and ETLs, does SSIS handle those, or you have to go to Azure to get those kind of things done?
Sure. I think I've got the core of your question. For those of you that can't hear, his question seems to revolve around ETLing, and we'll talk about that acronym here in a second. ETLing data in a non-relational sense. So ETLing big data, and is that something that's core to SSIS, or you have to go to Azure for that? And you can pull data from big data structures like HDInsight and like Data Lake into SSIS. SSIS 2017 has connectors for Azure Data Lake. However, in general, when you want to move data around big data structures, and it's generally not considered ETL, it's considered something called ELT, and we won't talk about that. But in Azure, there's something called Azure Data Factory that has connectors for a lot of the different types of HDInsight clusters. So for instance, if you wanted to move data between HDInsight Kafka, which you can use to catch big data, into HDInsight Storm, which you can use to process streaming data, you can do a lot of that through things like Azure Data Factory, can handle a lot of the things that SSIS would be doing in SQL Server. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, he's muted. He's muted. I guess that's all the questions we have so far. Is there any more questions from the audience? Oh, I guess that's all we have. Thank you so much, Brad, for sharing this great knowledge. This is very informative. Oh, okay. There's another one coming. Where can we find the recording? Okay. I will post the recording later on YouTube and send out an email to all those people who registered for this event. And just make sure to check your email. You'll get it. I guess that's all we have. And thank you so much, Brad, and YouTube channel. Yes. For spending Saturday night to share this knowledge with us, and it's very, very good and very informative. And thanks everybody for attending. And this session, like I said, is recorded and we'll share it on the YouTube. And just make sure you check your email and you'll get it. All right. I guess we'll stop here, and thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you at our next session.
Thank you.